How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, I want to discuss the Hailey Buzbee case. And yes, I am very late to the game, and I apologize. I was doing other cases, and then I wanted to research this one fully. But this case deserves our awareness. It deserves our attention, just like every other case that we're covering on this channel. And again, I'm a little late to the game, but hopefully I provide perspective that also goes beyond what you're getting elsewhere. So I do feel that if you know this case, I'm telling you, I'm going to cover areas that you may not be aware of. And the reason why I know that, it's coming from my perspective. And then also I'm going to give you the facts, the timeline, and everything. But this case deserves a lot of attention. And I know everybody right now is focusing on Nancy Guthrie. That also deserves a lot of attention. That's active and ongoing. But I don't want to forget this one. You know, even though we found her remains and we have a suspect in custody, there's so much here that her sacrifice can create a tremendous impact in prevention. And I just want to put this on my channel. At this point, this is more for awareness and seeing what we can learn together as we journey through this tragedy. So let me just show you a quick little video from WSYX ABC, kind of give you a little background of the case, and then go over my script here. And then later on today, I will be with Russ Hamilton, and we're going to give a bit of a breakdown again to the Nancy Guthrie case, waiting for the end of the day to roll out to try to get all the latest updates, and we're going to kind of explore some perspectives. So it'll be a straight-up discussion, not so much scripted, just more of what our thoughts are. So it's going to be a bit subjective, but I wanted to have that dialogue. The most recent updates I've already done. That's out there. Was put up yesterday. But I still wanted to sit down and have a discussion with Russ to kind of just share our thoughts. Okay, so let's show you a little. This is 2 days old. So this is the most current with all the updates related to Hailey Buzbee.
The last 90 minutes tonight, the Hocking County Sheriff's Office released a new timeline on this case involving 17-year-old Hailey Buzbee. Here is what we've now learned.
Hailey was reported missing from her home near Indianapolis, Indiana on January 6th. 39-year-old Tyler Thomas from here in Columbus was identified as a suspect in her disappearance. On January 16th, Hailey was tracked to Columbus. CPD investigators say Thomas admitted to picking her up from Indiana, but then he claimed he dropped her off on the side of a road in western Ohio. They learned that was not true.
Then on January 20th, Thomas was tracked to a short-term rental in Hocking County. That's when the sheriff's office there and the FBI began investigating. Over the weekend, on Sunday, investigators say Thomas took police to Perry County and showed them where Buzbee's remains were located. And on Monday, investigators searched that Hocking County rental once again, and they say they found even more forensic evidence. Steve Levine spent the day in Hocking and Perry counties as this investigation is continuing to unfold.
He spoke with the Hocking County Sheriff about this complicated and disturbing case.
The Indiana teen's remains found here at Wayne National Forest Sunday at a trailhead in Perry County. And Hocking County Sheriff telling us, had it not been for the man now charged in connection with her disappearance, they may not have found the missing teen.
Everyone's working diligent to solve this case and to bring some closure to the family.
Nearly a month after 17-year-old Hailey Buzbee disappeared from her suburban Indianapolis home, her remains found buried in a snowy wooded area inside Wayne National Forest. If Mr. Thomas did not provide this information, do you think you would have found her remains?
It would have been difficult. You never know what time could tell where the police would take us to.
39-year-old Tyler Thomas charged in connection with Hailey's disappearance. Police say the two met on a gaming platform, and Thomas picked up Buzbee at her home January 5th and drove her to Columbus, where authorities say the two stayed at his Victorian Village home. Charging documents say deleted files on Thomas's phone and computer included photos and videos of the teen performing sex acts. Authorities say the two then spent time in a short-term rental in a Logan neighborhood. Law enforcement executing a search warrant there after Thomas turned himself in. What did you find in that cabin?
They found some forensic evidence, which they feel might be linked to a crime scene, to a death.
Thomas's attorney says the Columbus man did not kill the teenager, but is planning for murder charges to be filed against him. ABC6 asking the sheriff about what Thomas told them about how Buzbee died.
He didn't say that he killed her. So I'm not sure if he did, and if he did, it was done there.
Licking County Coroner's Office telling us the autopsy results have been sent to Perry County for release. We have reached out to Perry County's coroner, but have not heard back. On your side, Steve Levine, ABC6 News.
So there's a lot I learned when I was doing the research of this case, and it kind of is a bit similar to the Celeste Rivas Hernandez case when we're talking about runaways and people that could have been kidnapped or abducted, and the urgency. And then basically, you know, sometimes when you have a child or a young teenager or a 17-year-old here, what looks like a runaway on the surface could be someone being lured, and that has to be taken into account. And you're going to see that here. There's going to be a shift from when January 6th, when the police first get involved, to January 20th, when they up the ante. But let's just go through it. I got some lessons. I want to read it out to you guys. There's some areas here I feel we can have some great discussion on. If not so much for this case, I just believe there's a lot of stuff here that could be utilized for a greater purpose. That's why I didn't want to just sit on all this. So on the night of Monday, January 5th, 2026, 17-year-old Hamilton Southeastern High School student Hailey Buzbee quietly left her family home in the enclave at Vermilion neighborhood of Fishers, Indiana, sometime around 10 p.m. She was wearing a white blouse, gray jeans, black puffer jacket, and carried a pink Vera Bradley duffel bag. Her parents say it had been a normal good day. They went to bed believing their daughter was in the house, only to wake in the early hours of January 6th and to find her room empty, no note, no goodbye, and her phone gone, even though its last ping was at the house, suggesting she slipped out without their knowledge. Her father, Bo Buzbee, later said she had left without many essential items, and that the way she executed the departure, sneaking out, meeting a car, walking away from her life with no real supplies, felt above her skill level, convincing him that outside influence must have helped plan it. From a policing standpoint, when a teen leaves late at night without a phone, money, or basic essentials, that pattern leans much more towards an adult-directed departure than a spontaneous runaway, especially when it's out of character. Investigators see that as a high-risk situation because the teen appears to be relying on someone else, often an adult, for transportation, shelter, and a plan, which raises immediate concerns about grooming, exploitation, or trafficking. That's why I wanted to, this is one of the main reasons why I wanted to do this case, is because we're looking at Celeste Rivas too, Celeste Rivas Hernandez. You know, Hailey didn't have this history, not that I know of, but Celeste did. The runaway. And it's like, you know what, well, they're running away. This has become a pattern. And then the urgency gets eroded. And that's what groomers want. That's why in some cases they target runaways or target people that fit, that meet that criteria, because they know the person's behaviors cause us to erode our urgency, erode that priority. But I like how we mentioned here from a policing standpoint, this is the added caveat that we have to realize. Even if the person has a history of running away, when you see a teen leave late at night without a phone, money, or basic essentials, that pattern leans much more towards an adult-directed departure than a spontaneous runaway, especially when it's out of character. So I like the beginning when it looks like they could be relying on somebody else. That means they could be being lured. And at that point, that should up the ante. At that point, it's no longer a runaway. It's possibly a victim of someone. They're a victim of being groomed. And I think that, to me, is extremely scary. So I thought that was, I wanted to add that little caveat. I want to show you another video real quick. I have a few videos here. Let me see.
In just a bit, we want to get back to a story we've been bringing you here on Fox 59 midday. We're continuing our coverage of the disappearance and death of 17-year-old Hailey Buzbee.
We're also working to get you updates on a few things we know you all have questions on. But first, a quick update this midday on what we know right now. Hailey disappeared from her Fishers home in early January. 39-year-old Tyler Thomas, who you see here, has been arrested as the suspect. His attorney says he led the FBI and other law enforcement to Buzbee's body on Sunday in Perry County, Ohio. We are also working to learn exactly where she was found, but sources tell us she was dismembered.
Now, Columbus, Ohio police believe she was killed while staying at a short-term rental property. Police say Buzbee met Thomas on a gaming app online. We have asked Fishers Police, Ohio Police, as well as the FBI if they can tell us more about what particular gaming app it was, but none would give us any sort of insight as to what. We know that's a question many of you have. We also don't know when Thomas could face that upgraded murder charge.
So far, court records show he is facing, however, one count of pandering obscenity involving a minor and one count of tampering with evidence for deleting sexually explicit videos of Buzbee that were on his phone. His bond is set at $1.5 million. We also know the Buzbee case has touched so many people this week, including a woman who was also a victim of an online predator herself.
Yeah, she actually reached out to us here at Fox 59. We're talking about Alicia Kozak. She's the first known victim of child abduction using the internet. She was taken and brutalized for several days back in 2002. She tells us that a man lured her in through an online chat room, repeatedly assaulted her before she was finally rescued. Since that time she was victimized, she says the internet has become a lot more dangerous. She now gives talks at schools and conferences across the country, pushing the message that parents, you can't sit back and assume your kids are going to be safe online.
But if we don't teach them how to be careful and we don't teach them what those dangers are, then they don't know how to keep themselves safe. And then the most important part of this is that you have to let your children know that they can come to you with absolutely anything.
Yeah, her hope is that Buzbee's case will lead to changes at the State House and the passage of what's known as Alicia's Law. Several states have, by the way, adopted the measure, which sets up a dedicated funding source for internet crimes against children. Task forces will keep you updated on how this develops.
It's funny, as they mentioned the ICAC, I believe you're also seeing them in the Nancy Guthrie case because they're experts at that digital side of things. I mean, we've been seeing a lot of cases, especially involving Roblox, and the gaming's probably been Fortnite with D4VD, Discord, where you get to have those private dialogues, or Snapchat. I mean, it's not even so much about the gaming, but the chats that they can have in these quiet peripherals, like Snapchat or Discord, and that's where the engagement becomes real and personal. That's where the grooming takes place because they're able to isolate their victims. Now, guys, I got some great videos. If you look at my playlist for the Celeste Rivas Hernandez case, we really do a lot of videos dedicated to this. I mean, literally taking the Celeste Rivas Hernandez case, but generalizing out so it can have a bit of a greater application. And the biggest concern would be is what happens when that internet celebrity connects back to your child. That to me has become a scary thing. I mean, back in the day it was protecting the celebrity from people that have been watching them on TV, protect the celebrity. But now you got some people that have some internet fame here, social media fame here, that really are not good people. But they use that celebrity, they use that fame as a label. They use it as a way to maybe promote some image that the young audience connects to, but then maybe us as parents say that guy would be a fool to do something foolish and lose all this. But they hide behind the label when actually they are utilizing the label to fuel their criminal acts. So I've done some really good videos. Let me just show you something, guys, if I can make a recommendation, because it would make sense. I want to look at my playlist for the Celeste Rivas Hernandez case. I want to show you which ones I think you may find interesting that could relate to this case. So let me bear with me, guys. I just want to go to my channel real quick. Here, let me just share the screen. So I want to just let me see something. Where's playlist? I've done a lot of videos. Where are you, Celeste Rivas Hernandez? Where are you? Right here. All right, let me. This is the playlist. Hold on. Can you guys see it? Yes. Okay, let me just look at my list of videos for this. How do I do that? How do I look at my? No, let me. I just want to see my videos. I don't know how to. Is there a way to view playlist? Or maybe if I click it. Bear with me, guys, because I just want to show you something. Oh, right here. Maybe I do it this way. All right, guys. So I got some. It's fine. These are all the 61 videos on the right here. The ones I would recommend you watch is I know it's long, guys, but did grooming lead to Celeste's death? There's one I'm really proud of that we had a good dialogue. Grooming and Runaway in the D4VD case, the hidden manipulation behind the headlines. I would love for you guys to check that one out. And this one, Celeste, troubled home or grooming. Those are with a mental health counselor. That's going to apply to this dialogue as well. So if you guys get a chance, check it out. There's a very good, healthy playlist there. So let's go back to the Hailey Buzbee case. So Hailey was biracial, 17-year-old, about 5'4" and 120 pounds, with long braids and brown eyes, described by her principal as a valued member of Hamilton Southeastern High School with a big heart and positive spirit. Family and friends remember her as smart, kind, artistic, a loving big sister, and a bright light whose life revolved around school, friends, and her parents, which made it deeply out of character that she would disappear without telling anyone. On January 6th, Fisher's police posted a missing persons alert describing her and asking the public for help. Within days, her relatives built what local media called an army for Hailey: billboards, wrapped vehicles, search parties, prayer vigils, and vital posts, framing her not as a rebellious runaway, but as an endangered teen whose disappearance made no sense in light of who she was. Okay, so when a family in school describes a teen as stable, connected, and responsible, and early alerts stress missing essentials and out-of-character behavior, agencies should move away from just a runaway frame and treat the case as high risk. In Hailey's situation, the public message began to reflect that risk even before the internal paperwork caught up. But the gap between what the family was saying and what the classification allowed is part of what her parents now want changed. We'll get to that. It'll be like a pink alert. But it's the community that said, hey, listen, doesn't have a history of running away. She's not a problem child. This had to have been some level of grooming or luring her. And we need to put a little bit more of a priority on here, because that means that she could be relying on someone else. And who is that someone else? So there is another party involved. So now we have Tyler Thomas and the Runaway versus Endangered label. So Tyler Thomas, let me show you Tyler Thomas. I know you guys saw him already, but let's and now, by the way, he hasn't been charged for murder yet. Got other serious charges he's gonna have to answer to, but as of now, the murder he hasn't been charged with yet. There's a video I'm going to show you here from Long Crime that shows you a little bit about of him being booked through the jail. Shows you right at the beginning. Let me show you that because it's interesting. Let's see, right here. Here we go.
You were looking at the man investigators say is at the center of one of the most disturbing cases to unfold across Indiana and Ohio in years. His name, Tyler Thomas. He's silent, expressionless, being booked into a county jail. Police say this man is an online predator, that he lured 17-year-old Hailey Buzbee allegedly out of her home after meeting her online, picking her up, and then weeks later, he led investigators allegedly to the wooded area in Ohio where her remains were found. And now the question investigators haven't answered yet: could this case lead to a homicide charge? And what are authorities now saying as this multi-agency investigation continues? The FBI and local authorities too. Now, Tyler Thomas, he's now in custody on charges of pandering sexually oriented material and tampering with evidence. Authorities say that additional charges are possible, and his attorney says that he expects that his client will face a charge of homicide. But now we have some new video. The booking footage showing the man at the center of these allegations, Tyler Thomas, being processed into custody in Ohio. This video, it's a long, revealing look at a man who authorities say is connected to this case and is the man who led them to the remains of the girl that so many people were looking for. And when you look at this video, it may be hard to tell who Tyler Thomas is, what his body language tells us. It's unclear.
All right, so I think at that point he's being stripped. That's why it's a little blurred out. So Tyler Thomas is a 39-year-old man from Columbus, Ohio, living on Hunter Avenue in the Victorian Village area, who worked in a IT type role and had no major prior criminal records flagged by prosecutors at his first appearance. That doesn't mean he hasn't done anything wrong. He just hasn't been caught. Fisher's police technically classified her. Sorry, where am I? When Hailey was first reported missing, Fisher's police technically classified her as a runaway because she appeared to have left willingly and with a plan, and there was no evidence at first of a forcible abduction from her home. But as detectives learned more, her late-night exit without essentials, the age gap, and the fact that she had been assisted by an outside influence she met online, they recognized the risk, and on January 20th, formally reclassified her as an endangered missing juvenile. You got a 22-year age gap. Her father told reporters that, again, the way she executed this was above her skill level, and that she left without essentials, and that he believed someone had coached or directed her, likely through social media or gaming contacts. Thomas, who lived alone, became that focus, an older man from another state who had driven to Indiana to pick up a minor and take her back to Columbus. In explaining the charge, police have pointed to the specifics of the investigation. So you have her age, the online connection, the older man, and their belief she did not act alone as the reasons they moved her from runaway to endangered. Okay, sorry, and explaining the change to endangered missing juvenile, because she was a runaway at first. The change is explained this way. Police have pointed to the specifics of the investigation, her age, the online connection, the older man, and their belief she did not act alone as the reasons they moved her from runaway to endangered. The roughly 2-week delay reflects the fact that current systems are built around narrower boxes. She left from home without visible force, so she fit the runaway definition on paper, and only once they confirmed the older online contact, cross-state pickup, and lack of essentials did the case formally meet their endangered criteria. Her family now argues that lag between obvious grooming risk and formal endangered status. That's exactly what they're trying to do. This Hailey law is trying to create a pink alert, and hopefully they fix that lag. So again, when she was a runaway, it may not have been as urgent. Then when they upped her 14 days later on the 20th to endangered missing juvenile, it sets a bit of a more urgent priority, more resources. And now, as I said, they're trying to create a Hailey's law. It's like a pink alert because they need to fix that. And again, it makes sense, right? I mean, grooming, see that a lot lately, especially now with social media. So it's good to revamp, because grooming now is happening in those private chats. All right, so we want to explore the online gaming connection. That's where the grooming takes place. So investigators and major outlets agree that Hailey met Thomas through online gaming, but no one has publicly named the specific game or platform. Curious about that. Reporting says the relationship began in an in-game chat and voice, and then shifted into more personal, private conversations over time, with Thomas cultivating trust, emotional closeness, and secrecy. Advocates point to this as a textbook grooming pattern, An older adult uses shared interests and frequent contact to build rapport, moves conversations from public spaces into private direct messages and calls, offers emotional validation, pressures for secrecy, and eventually normalizes the idea of meeting in person. Police say they're combing through her social media and gaming history to determine exactly how long Thomas was in her life and whether he approached other minors with similar tactics on the same platform. And by the way, they're fishing, these groomers, because ultimately they want that meat. They want that meat. So he must have done something here where the meat became a possibility, which obviously it was. But it gets dangerous, man. Once they get off that game and they go to those direct messaging, that's where it becomes dangerous, real dangerous, because it gets personal. It gets personal. And they're experts. They're experts at what they do. I've gotten books on it. Manipulation Decoded, Breaking Boundaries. I mean, it talks about the game of manipulation, because let's be honest, grooming is manipulation. It's acting on vulnerabilities. That's what it's doing. And they connect on those vulnerabilities. And then they isolate them. And the only support the teenager has is the groomer. The isolation's key. They need to isolate their targets. That means that we cannot allow that to happen. At least we know that they cannot be effective if they cannot isolate the target from any type of counter influence. So we know there's prevention in not allowing that to occur, but it gets so much harder with digital computers and gaming platforms and everybody coming up in a different way to get past the system. I mean, a lot of these apps are really built on, even though they may not say it, but they're built on secrecy. Hey, you want a way to cheat on your spouse and they don't know, join Snapchat. And all these things are actually inviting people to use it for criminal ways because you're protecting the communication. So the missed intervention points in a pattern like this often include parents maybe not realizing how intense or private their child online relationship has become. Platforms not flagging or limiting adult minor contact in private spaces, and schools not yet teaching that online friends who push for secrecy and offline meetings are a major danger sign. Major danger sign, yeah. Recognizing those behaviors as warning signs, not just intense friendship, is a central goal of the grooming awareness, Recognizing those behaviors as warning signs, not just intense friendships, is a central goal of the grooming awareness push tied to Hailey's case, tied to many cases, to be honest with you. Okay, so I want to go to the early investigation, the missing to high risk. So when Hailey's parents realized on January 6th that she was gone with no contact, they reported her missing to Fishers Police. It's in Indiana. Police say her family reported her missing that day, and investigators immediately noted that she had met a 39-year-old man on an online gaming platform. Detectives canvassed the enclave at Vermilion and surrounding roads for surveillance footage and found an unfamiliar vehicle in the neighborhood around the time she vanished. Plate data traced that car to Tyler Thomas in Columbus. On January 16th, Fishers Police formally contacted Columbus Police about Thomas, deepening the cross-state collaboration. According to Chief Ed Gebhardt, Fishers Police and the FBI spoke with Thomas within days. He admitted that he had driven from Ohio to Fishers and picked Hailey up at her home, but claimed he later dropped her off along a roadside in Western Ohio and drove away. Just dropped her off in the road. I mean, by January 20th, investigators had officially declared Hailey an endangered missing juvenile. And by January 21st, Dateline's Missing in America had picked up the story, describing her as in danger and noting law enforcement collaboration across state lines. That 2-week arc from initial runaway label to endangered designation and national coverage shows how existing definitions can lag behind the reality of a groomed teen in serious danger, and why her family now wants a faster grooming specific response built into the system. And 100%. Because you know the numbers of those being groomed has probably increased dramatically since the internet, and then gaming on top of that. So I know there are some questions here about when they found the vehicle and then got their eyes on Thomas. Why was there so much delay? So it says, well, when Hailey left her own home with no forced entry or on camera abduction, which slotted her into the runaway voluntary category on paper at first, even though it was clearly not normal behavior, detectives still had to find and interpret the videos or the video, pull plates, and run the vehicle through databases, then connect that car to a specific owner in another state. Gebhardt says they identified the car and encountered the suspect within days, but the formal documented contact in Columbus is January 16th. Before they can go after someone as a suspect in the full sense, they need more than this car was in the neighborhood. They had to verify the vehicle owner link, confirm the online gaming connection, establish that she didn't act alone and was with a 39-year-old man, and start getting cooperation from Columbus PD and the FBI because this was now interstate. The system is built for witness abductions, not walked out to meet someone she knows. So moving from Runaway with a plan to endangered, missing, groomed by an adult took time, even though they were already working leads. They didn't have the legal posture to say immediately charge or arrest Thomas until it developed enough cooperation. So the delay isn't that they ignored Tyler Thomas for days. It's that they were racing the clock to identify his car, confirm he picked her up, and build a legally solid case across state lines in a situation the policy still treat at first like a runaway rather than a classic kidnapping, which is exactly the structural gap Hailey's family is now trying to change. I knew that'd be a question that would be asked. So let's go to Hocking County. So Thomas's account that he simply dropped Hailey on the side of the road immediately alarmed investigators and the public, given the age gap, interstate travel, and January's weather. Working with Columbus Police Homicide, detectives executed search warrants at his Hunter Avenue home and on the vehicle he used to pick her up, finding digital and physical evidence showing that Hailey had been inside his Columbus residence after leaving Indiana. A second warrant led them to a short-term rental in Hocking County, Ohio, about 50 miles from Columbus, that they searched a couple of weeks ago, and then just again yesterday. Okay, so that's the quote from an older article, a couple of days old, after new information came in. Phone location records, travel data, and other digital evidence show that Thomas and Hailey stayed at the rental in the days after January 5th, and both Columbus Police and Hocking County authorities now say they believe she was killed at that short-term rental. Sheriff Lanny North had said investigators found some forensic evidence which they feel might be linked to a crime scene, to a death, but that it must be examined by the lab before they can say exactly what it is. When a suspect's story doesn't match what you find in their home and a linked rental, especially when digital evidence shows the victim stayed there, that typically pushes investigators to view the suspect as deceptive and the location as primary crime scenes. In practice, it moves the narrative from he abandoned her towards something lethal happened while she was with him, and shapes both the charges prosecutors consider and how a jury may later read his credibility. I want to go to the alerts now. So we have amber, silver gaps, and that's why they're pushing for this pink alert. So despite the risk factors, minor, late night departure, online grooming, older out-of-state man, Hailey's case did not trigger an amber alert or silver alert. Under Indiana rules, amber alerts generally require a confirmed abduction and specific suspect vehicle information, while silver alerts are for missing people with certain disabilities or cognitive issues. Because Hailey was initially categorized as a runaway and had no qualifying disability, she didn't meet either set of criteria. Her father and advocates argue that this exposed a dangerous gap. A teen who appears to have been groomed online, leaves at night without essentials, and is believed to be with a much older man can still fall outside existing alert systems, delaying immediate statewide broadcasts during the most critical hours. In response, they're pushing Hailey's law, centered on creating a new pink alert for endangered youth who don't fit amber or silver criteria but present clear risk indicators: online grooming or predator contact, sudden unexplained disappearance, suspicious or coercive communication, or credible trafficking, exploitation risk, even without a witnessed abduction. The proposal would let law enforcement issue a pink alert quickly when those factors are present, pushing urgent information out through phones, highways, media, and social platforms rather than waiting for the stricter amber silver threshold. The idea of a pink alert acknowledges that many modern child endangerment cases start with grooming and voluntary departures, not classic stranger abduction, and gives police a tool to respond to those risk patterns in real time before a case turns into what Hailey became. Guys, I want to mention something. I was watching something. I think I did a video on this. There's really no such thing as stranger abduction anymore. And I say that a bit of sarcasm, but what I'm trying to get at is they can get on the internet, become your friend, and the person abducting you is someone that they think they know. Have we prepared our kids for that? We compare them for stranger danger, but what about the person you think you know? And I think that's why you need this shift, because they're voluntarily going into a vehicle of someone that they think they know through private chats. It really is scary. So alongside the pink alert concept, Hailey's family and supporters are tying her case to broader gaps in grooming awareness and public education. They argue that traditional stranger danger lessons don't match how predators operate now. Through games, direct messages, and long-term emotional manipulation rather than parking lot snatching. Hailey's law calls for mandatory modern grooming awareness education in Indiana schools, teaching kids and parents to recognize patterns like adults moving, conversations off platforms, demanding secrecy, asking for sexual images, offering gifts or money, and pushing for in-person meetings, even when there's no explicit threat. Advocates say Hailey's story shows how quickly a teen can go from just gaming in her bedroom to slipping out the door at 10 p.m. to meet a man she trusts online, and how unprepared many families and schools are to spot and interrupt that process. Guys, as much as a parent you're uncomfortable with having these conversations, you got to have them because they're receiving it. So might as well be from you. The most effective grooming awareness policies will likely be those that combine clear education for kids, practical guidance and tools for parents, and obligations on platforms to flag risky adult-minor interactions so that grooming patterns are treated as early-stage danger, not just intense digital friendships. Now, by late January, based on phone and device data, travel records, and what they found in Ohio, investigators concluded that Hailey had likely died within days of leaving Indiana. On February 1st, Fisher's officials had a press conference announcing that they now believe she was deceased and publicly describing the search as recovery only, explaining that they were looking for her remains and evidence rather than expecting to find her alive. At that point, the multi-agency team included Fisher's police, Indiana State Police, the FBI, Columbus Police, Homicide, Hocking County investigators, Perry County authorities, and Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigations. For her family, that announcement marked a devastating pivot from hoping she might be found alive to waiting for word that her body had been located. When a department publicly moves a case into recovery only, it usually means they have strong evidence, a lack of phone or financial activity, corroborated timelines, and sometimes forensic indication that the person is no longer alive. Changes the posture of everyone involved. Families begin grieving a death. Investigators concentrate on locating remains and evidence rather than live sighting tips. And defense teams start thinking less about is she alive somewhere and more about how to respond to an eventual homicide theory. And then you got the Perry County recovery and cooperation with the FBI. As the case shifted into recovery, Thomas's legal team moved him into a posture of highly visible cooperation. I'm going to show you that video. After they came on board, they contacted the FBI on a Friday, met with agents that evening, and obtained a court-approved jail furlough, allowing Thomas to be temporarily released from the Franklin County Jail into federal custody. Over that weekend, his attorneys, Thomas, FBI agents, and other officers traveled to a trailhead in Wayne National Forest in rural Perry County, Ohio, near New Straitsville, and close to a local landmark, Little Italy Pizza. It's about 40 miles from the Hocking County rental. There, according to his lawyer, Thomas took law enforcement to the precise spot so they wouldn't have to search a vast wooded area for a needle in a haystack. Sheriff North has openly said that without Thomas's directions, it would have been difficult to find her remains in that snowy, woody terrain. Let me show you this video of the lawyer. To me, this is kind of trying to minimize show that he's helpful, minimize accountability, and maybe if he does get hit with the murder charges, he could say that, well, he was helpful throughout the process, because that's what this is really about here. And it's, you know, if he wanted to do the right thing, he would have did the right thing immediately. This person had to be found. He lied. And now all of a sudden, when shit's hitting the fan, the lawyer probably said, you know, you better do what's right. And he's going to push in this dialogue, oh, how he wanted to do this, and this is on him. No, he would have done it when he should have done it. Instead of he had to be discovered and all this other stuff. Let's not forget what got us to this point. He's helpful now because there's a chance he could be facing the death penalty or life in prison. So let's just show that he's helpful now. So when they do sentencing, we could show he was helpful. No, he still had to be discovered. Integrity doesn't come after it's been discovered. All right, let me show you this. Not that he has integrity. That's from a law enforcement perspective. Okay, hold on.
Sam, you actually turned your client in over the weekend. Can you kind of explain how that came about?
Yes. So on Friday, Kate and Maya and I and one other staff member became involved in this case. After we learned about the details, we had to make a bunch of critical, time-sensitive decisions, and we collectively decided that contacting the FBI was the way to go. So we made that call around 2 or 3, and regrettably, due to maybe some administrative circumstances, we were not actually able to speak to an agent until Friday evening. Friday evening we got together with representatives from the FBI, and then we made arrangements to meet on Saturday. This is all at our client's request to fully cooperate with bringing closure as quickly as possible to this extraordinarily unfortunate situation. So we then reconvened Saturday morning. We met at our office with our client. We then received a call from Detective Feder and Sergeant Leroy from CPD Homicide. They requested that we meet them at the Columbus Police Department, which we did. At that meeting, present not only was our client and representatives from law enforcement, but also a representative from the Hocking County Prosecutor's Office. And so we were all working towards one common goal, and that was, as I said earlier, bringing closure for the family as quickly as possible. Our client insisted upon that, and that's precisely what we did. To that end, at our client's insistence, we assisted law enforcement Saturday afternoon and later Sunday, and that goal has now been met of bringing complete closure, at least with respect to this stage of the investigation, for everybody involved, but most important, the family of Ms. Buzbee.
Are you saying she's been recovered?
I'm saying that, yes. And again, it's impossible to understate the tragic nature of this circumstance. And again, I want to emphasize, and not being gratuitous, but our client had every right in the world to keep his mouth shut and not participate and let whatever chips there were fall where they may. He did precisely the opposite. He's been cooperative to the extent that, he's been able, and that cooperation has been fruitful. So I can tell you that yesterday, and you're already aware because you've done your homework with respect to the furlough order that went on, we accompanied law enforcement and the FBI to Perry County, and we assisted with pinpointing the location of Ms. Buzbee. And so in speaking with Prosecutor Rugg, who is the Perry County prosecutor, mercifully they were able to work through the evening with BCI at the helm and have, we believe, recovered Ms. Buzbee's body.
Will he be charged with homicide in Perry or Hocking County?
We anticipate that charges in that regard will come from Hocking County.
Do you know when?
We don't. As you can imagine, intelligent journalists that you are, these charges here, were agreed upon, and they're, I don't want to call them a placeholder, but he's not going to make bond, so Nobody's trying to rush anything. I mean, there's some procedural considerations for all parties at play, but right now everybody has time to take a breath and move ahead accordingly.
I know you've got your client's best interest at heart.
Always.
Did he explain why?
So I know you have to ask that question, and you know what my answer is, having worked with us for many years. I can't divulge client confidences, nor would I. I can certainly tell you that there's a difference between being responsible for certain acts of which one is not proud, and also distinguishing from taking another's life. I can tell you that he will be entering a not guilty plea if and when he's charged with a homicide in this matter, and will proceed accordingly. But again, at this juncture, all I can emphasize is his complete and unfettered cooperation with respect to locating the remains, and also reemphasize the collective work that was done with our office, with everybody's help, and with law enforcement's assistance to bring much needed closure to the Buzbee family in Indiana.
I know you obviously represent Mr. Thomas, but your thoughts for the Buzbee family right now?
It's hard to put into words. Oftentimes, the perception of the public is that just because you're a strong advocate for those that are accused, that you don't have any amount of empathy for what a family is going through. I can assure you that my colleagues and I are not of that mindset. We, and this is going to sound gratuitous, but we grieve for this tragic loss of life, and we grieve for the circumstances attendant to this loss, and that's why we, along with our client, took every difficult step necessary to assist. There is certainly a school of thought from a defense perspective. You just shut up and keep your mouth shut and do nothing, and just let law enforcement spend how many ever hundreds or thousands of man hours and woman hours it would have taken to locate Ms. Buzbee. We chose to do just the opposite. And I would submit that it's easy to say, oh, our thoughts and prayers and all that trite BS. We preferred in this case to let our actions do the talking. So you can imagine the twisting that Kate and I and everybody else in our office went through. Like, do we take these steps? Is it going to be complicated later on when these most serious murder charges are filed? Our client said, you take whatever steps are necessary to bring closure to this aspect of the case. And so I believe that those actions illustrate just how deeply committed we are to doing everything within our power to help the Buzbees move forward with the grieving process. So that's where we are.
Do you know where authorities found her? Or
I do.
Is that something that you can share?
Yeah, it's in Perry County. I mean, I can tell you that our client, along with Agent Lacey and others from the FBI, took law enforcement to the precise spot so they wouldn't have to needlessly waste time and energy seeking the proverbial needle in a haystack. We short-circuited that process deliberately and helped move this along yesterday afternoon.
Did your client tell you why he was involved with
Again, these are I understand these are important questions for you, but I wouldn't answer that. It's bad. I'm not trying to be shitty, but I mean, it's a good question, but one I can't answer.
Anything else you want to add, Sam?
No, I think you've asked good questions. And again, we just are and were committed to moving this portion of the investigation along as quickly as possible.
So what happens now?
Well, there are still some ongoing details and leads that are being pursued very diligently by Sergeant Leroy and other members of the Columbus Division of Police. They're working incredibly diligently to bring further closure. And that's, as you would say in your business, a developing story. So that's all I know.
So, the lawyer's just doing his job. I don't believe the client said, hey, want to make sure there's closure for them. I think in my mind, but I could be wrong, just perspective, is that he had to be convinced to probably give up some information. I think the lawyer's like, I can work best with you if you know where this body is, and maybe do what we can to show that we're helpful, and then try to mitigate stuff. Maybe there's even negotiation in the process here. I mean, death penalty in Ohio exists, but I don't think it's really going to get carried out. I mean, so I think it could be used for negotiations or whatever, maybe some lighter sentencing. But I think they just wanted to find her body. And I think the lawyer did what he could on his end to get that information. But he's also going to say the client really wanted to do this because he also has to protect his client in the process. So we found where the body is, but my client didn't do it, or later on my client was very helpful with it. But basically something may have happened in that dialogue where the lawyer knew, like, if you know where she is, let me put something on the table here. Let's get some discussions. Let's find that body. Let's bring closure. And I think that was driven by maybe the lawyer and then with a little push from the law enforcement side. But so as the case shifted into recovery, Thomas's legal team moved him into a posture of highly visible cooperation. After they came on board, as you saw, they contacted the FBI on a Friday and met with agents that evening, but the actual field work was scheduled for the next day so a judge could sign a court-approved jail furlough. Security and transport could be arranged, and ground rules for his cooperation could be set with counsel present. That furlough allowed Thomas to be temporarily released from the Franklin County Jail into federal custody for investigative purpose under an order requiring that he be returned to jail by that night. Over that weekend, his attorneys, Thomas, FBI agents, and other officers traveled to a trailhead in Wayne National Forest in rural Perry County, Ohio, near Straitsville and close to a local landmark, Little Italy Pizza, about 40 miles from the Hocking County rental. There, according to his lawyer, Thomas took law enforcement to the precise spot so they wouldn't have to search a vast wooded area for a needle in a haystack. And as we talked about before, Sheriff Lanny North had openly said that without Thomas's direction, it would have been difficult to find her remains in that snowy wooded terrain. So State BCI processed the site into the night, and by February 2nd, his attorney and multiple outlets reported that remains had been recovered. And on February 3rd to the 4th, the Perry County prosecutor confirmed that the remains found in Wayne National Forest belonged to Hailey Buzbee, based on work by the Licking County coroner. Officials have said an autopsy has been completed and the report provided to the Perry County coroner, but they have not yet released Hailey's cause or manner of death to the public, saying more information will be shared when appropriate. And an Ohio sheriff has said publicly that his department is still searching the area for other remains, indicating that the recovery may have been complex or incomplete. Fox 59, citing unnamed sources, has reported that Hailey's body was dismembered, but neither the sheriff, the prosecutor, nor the coroner has used that word in on-the-record statements so far, and the autopsy details remain sealed. So again, on the surface, this is cooperation. Underneath, it's also legal leverage. His lawyer emphasizes that the existing Franklin County charges were agreed upon and that Thomas had every right to keep his mouth shut, but chose to help framing the Wayne National Forest trip as a voluntary act that saved hundreds of investigative hours and brought the family closure. In a case involving interstate travel and alleged sexual exploitation, federal prosecutors can bring their own charges, such as transporting a minor across state lines for unlawful sexual activity or producing child sexual abuse material, on top of what Ohio counties file. And defense teams know that visible cooperation with the FBI can later be used to argue for reduced federal exposure or a more favorable sentence if those charges come out. So seen through that lens, a jail furlough to lead the FBI to Hailey's body is likely as much about positioning for state and federal negotiations as it is about remorse. Creates a record his lawyers can point to when they ask prosecutors and judge to consider his help in deciding charges and sentences, which let's bring us to charges. What are the current charges right now? So as early as February 2026, Thomas is not charged with murder. I don't have that yet. Franklin County has charged him with tampering with evidence, alleging he deleted or tried to delete a sexual video involving Hailey from his phone, and pandering sexually oriented material involving a minor, alleging he created and possessed explicit material with her at his Hunter Avenue home. His attorney described these counts as agreed upon, functioning as initial charges that keep him jailed while Hocking County prepares expected homicide charges tied to what investigators believe happened at the rental. A Franklin County judge set his bond at $1.5 million and kept that amount at his February 2nd arraignment. imposing conditions that if he posts bond, he must stay off the internet and have no unsupervised contact with minors. And he's due back in Franklin County Court on December 10th. So 7th, 8th, 9th, that's Tuesday. In the background is a harsher reality. If Hocking County prosecutors ultimately charge him with an aggravated form of homicide, especially one tied to kidnapping or sexual assault of a minor, Ohio law allows for the possibility of seeking the death penalty, though they have not said whether they will pursue it. Even before any formal death penalty notice, the possibility itself becomes a powerful negotiation tool, which I mentioned. Defense attorneys have strong incentives to demonstrate cooperation with FBI and local authorities, negotiate agreed-upon charges, and build a record they can later use to argue for life instead of death if capital punishment is ever put on the table. The FBI's involvement in potential federal charges the FBI's involvement in potential federal charges for interstate exploitation or CSAM production also means the federal prosecutor could shape any plea structure, coordinating with state counterparts to decide what combination of charges and sentences best reflect the harm and whether a global resolution is possible. Let's just see something real quick, just out of curiosity. I want to see what that's child safety, maybe CSAM. Let me see. Oh, child sexual abuse material. I should have known that. That's so when it said because he had that probably on his phone or some type of digital record of that. So CSAM. So the FBI involvement and potential federal charges for interstate exploitation or child sexual abuse material. Child sexual abuse material. Try to learn the process with you guys. That's good to know. CSAM. We love our acronyms in law enforcement. So confirmed, Hailey left home late on January 5th with limited belongings and without a working phone. She met up with 39-year-old Tyler Thomas, whom she knew from online gaming. Investigators quickly tied an unfamiliar car in her neighborhood to him, and he admitted picking her up. Digital and forensic evidence placed her at his Columbus home in a Hocking County rental, when investigators believe she died within days. Fisher's official publicly declared the case recovery only and said they believe she is deceased under a court-approved jail furlough. Thomas led the FBI and other authorities to her remains at a trailhead in Wayne National Forest in Perry County, which has now been formally identified as Hailey Buzbee's. An autopsy has been completed by the Licking County coroner, and Thomas is currently charged in Franklin County with tampering with evidence and pandering sexually oriented material involving a minor, held on a $1.5 million bond. So he may have kept her in that rental apartment for a few days. Who knows? Tied up? Who knows? Unknown. The autopsy publicly released caused a manner of death, the precise condition of the remains, and what that may indicate about what was done to her body, the detailed timeline and conduct inside the Hocking County rental and at the Wayne National Forest site, where the Hocking and Perry counties will file one or more homicide and related counts, and whether any of those will be death penalty eligible, whether federal prosecutors will bring their own charges for interstate travel and sexual exploitation, whether any additional remains or evidence will be recovered in Ohio, and the full online gaming history between Hailey and Thomas, including whether he targeted other minors. So that's all unknown at this point. So the autopsy, cause of death, what really happened in that rental apartment, what type of gaming were they on, the conditions of her remains, what can he be charged with fully. So far, only unnamed sources quoted by Fox 59 have explicitly described Hailey as dismembered, while official law enforcement and coroner communication have not used that term or disclosed autopsy details, which is why it remains a reported but not formally confirmed aspect of this case. So Thomas' attorneys are building a narrative centered on negotiated cooperation and carefully limited responsibility. In their first major on-camera comment, they stressed that the Franklin County charges were agreed upon, that their client had every right to keep his mouth shut, but instead insisted on helping the FBI locate Hailey, and that he will plead not guilty to any homicide charges that may come out of Hocking County. The lawyer explicitly draws a line between being responsible for certain acts of which one is not proud of, and then taking another's life, signaling a future defense that may admit to sexual exploitation, moving or hiding the body, and deleting evidence while denying that Thomas intentionally killed her, leaving room for claims of accident, overdose, or reckless conduct rather than premeditated murder. The timing matters. If this were purely about conscience, he could have called 911 the night things went wrong. Instead, his cooperation comes after he arrested, after agreed upon charges. Sorry, let's do that again. The timing matters. If this was purely about conscience, he could have called 911 the night things went wrong. Instead, his cooperation comes after, which I mentioned, he's arrested, after agreed upon charges, and after a negotiated federal furlough, which makes it look more like strategic damage control aimed at softening both state and possible federal outcomes, including any death penalty risk, than a spontaneous act of remorse. In front of a jury, you can expect his team to lean hard on that distinction. He did wrong things, but he didn't intend for her to die. To try to pull the case down from the harshest homicide category, even if they concede serious crimes around it. I'm interested if they did get high together and then she overdosed and then could have brought her remains to the rented apartment and then was trying to figure out what to do with her, and then he could have dismembered her. Kind of sounds a lot like the Celeste Rivas Fernandez case. I'm not saying that happened. I'm just saying, but I mean, they're predators. But I mean, is that possible? That maybe he didn't have the intent to kill, just abuse her sexually? I mean, does it? The world we live in, huh? The world we live in. I mean, he could have killed her at the house, or maybe they were doing some stuff, getting high. Sometimes, I'm not saying her case here, but sometimes the promise of drugs do get some of these individuals into the vehicle, want to experiment. And they trust that the adult, unfortunately, the adult that they spoke to, that they could trust them. And next thing you know, maybe that explains why she could have been doing those things, or he could have forced it on her. But either way, I'm sure that's going to be an argument. So now that puts a little bit more on the prosecutor. Now they're going to have to prove whenever they get their top that it really goes based on what the autopsy says. What was in her system? That's key. So now I'm very interested in finding out what the autopsy results are. I mean, did she have something in her system, or do we have enough in the autopsy result to show that he had taken her life willfully? For Hailey's family and community, the legal maneuvering doesn't change the core reality. Their daughter slipped out of a safe home without her essentials, influenced by an adult she met through gaming, and was later found dead in the woods of another state. So a statement, vigils, and an open letter shared widely online. Her parents and supporters describe her as bright light and loving sister who believed she was meeting a friend, not stepping into a lethal situation with a man more than twice her age. Advocates are using her story to highlight online grooming, warning signs, older adults moving from in-game chat to private DMs and videos, and demanding secrecy, asking for photos, offering gifts or money, and pushing for in-person meetings, and to argue that parents need more tools and education to spot these patterns early. So basically, through Hailey's law and related efforts, our family is calling for pink alerts and mandatory grooming awareness education, arguing that the system must update both its alert mechanisms and its prevention tools so that a teenager who's groomed online and walks out at 10 p.m. doesn't slip through a gap between amber and silver and vanish before anyone realizes just how much danger she's in. The broader hope is that by choosing those gaps on grooming awareness, alert systems, and multi-agency response, the next Hailey will be recognized as endangered much earlier, and the window for predators to explore online to offline pathways will be much smaller. There's a lot to learn here that I wanted to give out. Just to start the discussion, we'd love to see where the discussion goes in the comments. Guys, if you like the content, please, buy me a cup of coffee. The link to that's in my description, as well as the top of the YouTube channel, and stay safe.